Hello friends, welcome back to the series on physics of solids. In the earlier lectures in this series, we discussed about Miller indices, its evaluation, the definition and construction of reciprocal lattices and few examples of the evaluation of reciprocal lattices, especially for a primitive cubic lattice. Today we will start the episode with an introduction to an important concept in physics of solids, namely the Brillouin zone. We already discussed that the reciprocal lattice determines how the periodic structure offered by a crystal interacts with the waves. So, once we have the reciprocal lattice vectors, which we call that time as B1, B2 and B3, one can construct a reciprocal lattice. Again, the unit cell is the simplest repeating unit in a crystal, which you must have learned in your earlier classes in through different lectures. So, what is a unit cell? The unit cell basically completely defines the symmetry and structure of the entire crystal lattice, which is built up by repetitive translation of unit cell along its principal axis. So, it is like the building blocks which we use for the construction of a house or a structure. So, now our task is to connect the two concepts. As I told in one of the earlier lectures, there are two kinds of lattices. One is the direct lattice and the reciprocal lattice. We have learned in detail about the unit cell of a direct cell through the concepts such as primitive unit cell, non-primitive unit cell, etc. Or you have the concepts like the Bravais and the non-Bravais lattices. But what about the unit cell of a reciprocal lattice? The answer is Brillouin zone. So, what is a unit cell? What is a Brillouin zone? The Brillouin zone is defined as the unit cell of the smallest volume in the reciprocal lattice. So, the condition of the smallest volume is very important in this concept. The first Brillouin zone, as we call it, which we will see in a short while, is of much importance in the theory of solids. So, that is why we have to cover this portion in this lecture. So, like for any theoretical explanations of the properties of solids, one of the things which we explore is the energy band structure, or how does the phonon behaves in a crystal on interaction with a wave. There you will see in the later lectures that the concept of Brillouin zone, and especially the first Brillouin zone, is absolutely important. So, it is very important at this point that you make an understanding or a basic fundamental understanding of the first Brillouin zone and its construction. Now, the first Brillouin zone can be defined as the smallest volume enclosed by planes that are perpendicular bisectors of the reciprocal lattice vectors drawn from the origin. Don't get confused. You will get it more clearer when we see how we can construct a Brillouin zone. Now, question you are in mind is that how to construct a Brillouin zone, right? So, let us try to do that. There are few simple steps on which when we follow that, we can absolutely beautifully and simply construct the first Brillouin zone and understand the concept of the first, second, third Brillouin zones, etc. So, here I will be in this lecture, in order to help your understanding, I will be basically taking a two-dimensional lattices. Three-dimensional lattice will be more time consuming to explain. So, I will be explaining a 2D lattices, which you can always extend to a 3D lattices, which we have done in our earlier lectures, like in the case of Miller indices or in the case of reciprocal lattices. So, what are the steps for construction of a Brillouin zone? The first step is to use the real space lattice vectors to find the reciprocal lattice vectors and construct the reciprocal lattice. And we already have seen in the earlier lectures how to construct a reciprocal lattice, right? So, taking the cue from that knowledge, what you do is that you imagine a two-dimensional lattice as shown in the diagram over there. So, what was the first step? The first step is to find the reciprocal lattice vectors and construct the reciprocal lattice. So, for that purpose, we designate one of the points in the 2D lattice as the origin. Then the second step, there draw a line connecting the origin points, the point which we considered as which we designated as the origin, to one of its nearest neighbors. As you can see in the figure, it is represented by that arrow over there. This line is a reciprocal lattice vector as it connects 2 points in a reciprocal lattice, right. So, that much is clear. Now, the third step is to draw a perpendicular bisector to the first line. So, the first line was the line with which we connected 2 points in a reciprocal lattice, having considered one of the points in the reciprocal lattice as its origin. This perpendicular bisector, as you can see in the figure there, can be considered as the Bragg plane. Now, repeat the same process for so that we can draw the other Bragg planes also. So, as you can see in the figure there, you will see 4 different Bragg planes in that figure there, which is corresponding to different reciprocal lattice vectors connecting different neighbors of the designated origin which we originally took. The resultant locus of points defines the first Brillouin zone, which I have demarcated using a red color in the screen. So, the red colored zone is now we can call it as the first Brillouin zone. So, that was a two-dimensional lattice which is arranged simply one over the other. As you can see in the figure over there, there could be other kinds of lattices like in a hexagonal structures. You can see over there the Brillouin zone also looks like a hexagon. So, the Brillouin zone can be of different shapes. So, it depends on the real lattice or depends on the reciprocal lattice. So, that finishes the first Brillouin zone and finishes the drawing of the first Brillouin zone. Now, let us try to draw the second Brillouin zone. So, what should we do? There in the case of first Brillouin zone, we took the nearest neighbors to the designated point of origin. Here, in the case of second Brillouin zone, we will take the next nearest neighbor to the designated origin. So, like as you can see in the screen there, the blue arrow is drawn towards the next nearest neighbor. So, that forms a reciprocal lattice vector basically. Now, we repeat the process for which we did for the first Brillouin zone, like what was that? We will be drawing the perpendicular bisectors and we call them as the Bragg planes. So, we repeat the drawing of the Bragg planes similar to what we did for the first Brillouin zone, as you can see in the figure. So, again we will have 4 different Bragg planes and all of them together will enclose a new area or volume in the case of a three-dimensional lattice, as you can see there, which I colored in the blue color. So, that blue zone can be defined as the second Brillouin zone. Now, this process can be extended for the third Brillouin zone also, where again we draw the reciprocal lattice vectors to the next nearest neighbor, and then we complete the Brillouin zone, the third Brillouin zone, as shown by as shown using the yellow color on in the figure there. Now, so that was about the drawing of the reciprocal lattice vectors of the Brillouin zone using the reciprocal lattice vectors and a reciprocal lattice. So, based on the earlier classes, we know that a real lattice which is having a inter lattice point spacing of say A, when it is done in the reciprocal lattice, will have a interplanar space of 2 pi by A. And similarly, extending that, a real lattice unit cell, which we call as the Wigner seed cell, in the reciprocal lattice also you will have a similar unit cell, which you know that we call it as the Brillouin zone. So, what is the relative size of the Wigner seed cell to a Brillouin zone cell? For example, if one is asked to predict the size of a Brillouin zone given the dimensions of a Wigner seed cell, you can straight away tell that it will be the length, the higher the length between two lattice points in a real lattice, the lower the distance between the similar lattice points in the reciprocal lattice. So, correspondingly, the Brillouin zone's dimension will be inverse to that of the Wigner seed cell, right. So, here, which means that if I have a real lattice which is having the boundaries of the unit cell defined from say minus A to plus A, for example, here in the case of a Brillouin zone, my zone boundaries, for example, my first Brillouin zone boundaries will be from minus 2 pi by A to plus 2 pi by minus pi by A plus to plus pi by A, or the total dimension of the Brillouin zone, one side of the Brillouin zone will be 2 pi by A. So, there in our discussion on the phonons and the energy band structure, you will see the numbers like minus pi by A to plus pi by A, when we will be plotting the graphs corresponding to that of the phonons, or that for the electronic movement in a electric field. So, it takes the cue from here that it is actually we will be discussing about the Brillouin zone boundaries. Why Brillouin zone boundaries is important over there? Because actually whenever we are applying a say sound wave or an electric field, we are necessarily talking about the interaction between a wave and our lattice. So, there whenever the interaction between a wave and a crystal lattice comes into picture, we have to invoke the concept of reciprocal lattice, and there in the reciprocal lattice we know that it is the unit cell which is the characteristic single unit of the any lattice, which will decide the fate of a full lattice, and when it comes to reciprocal lattice, it is a Brillouin zone. So, it is therefore, we always take the boundaries from minus pi by A to plus pi by A, so that we can discuss about the physics of these solids when it interacts with a electric or a sound or an electromagnetic wave. So, this concept will be useful over there also. As you can see in the figure, one can always aim for drawing the Brillouin zone for 3-dimensional structure. In the figure you are seeing a structure called the rhombic dodecahedron, right. So, what is the rhombic dodecahedron? As I told you, the reciprocal lattice, unlike in the case of real lattices, the reciprocal lattice need not always be a parallelepiped. So, what does it mean by the Brillouin zone? For the Brillouin zone also need not be a parallelepiped. So, a Brillouin zone will actually project what does the reciprocal lattice will represent. So, when we draw a 3-dimensional unit cell for a reciprocal lattice also, you will have a similar structure as you will see in the figure. So, a rhombic dodecahedron is a convex polyhedron with 12 congruent rhombic faces, and it has 24 edges and 14 vertices. So, it is a complicated figure, but theoreticians in physics or in physical sciences do derive such structures, and they use it for theoretical predictions for the of the properties of a crystal, and this kind of studies are really important. So, over the time we have discussed about we have introduced the concepts like the Miller-Indus reciprocal lattice, and then the unit cell of the reciprocal lattice, which is called the Brillouin zone. Now, let us move into the next task there. We know all these concepts now, but how will we know what kind of a crystal structure our experimental sample is having? Then only we will be able to tell able to predict the properties of a particular solid with the help of its solid state crystal structure. So, it is very important from an experimental or in a realistic point of view to analyze the structure of crystals. So, in order to derive the crystal structure, there are many techniques in place. So, it depends on what you want to get. The techniques which we use, if we want to get the internal structure of a crystal, maybe a set of characterization studies, or somebody else may just need to study the surface of a crystal, he will use some specific technique, or some other group of scientists may need to study the magnetic lattices, which means that he is only concerned about the spin positioning within a lattice. He is not concerned about the other kind of atoms or basis units present in the crystal. So, for them we have another set of experimental techniques. So, our science is growing, and is growing, and therefore more and more new techniques will come in place. In any case, confining ourselves to the matter of discussion over in the kind of expertise which we developed over the last 2 lectures over here, we will be confining ourselves to derive the crystal structure from an internal crystal structure from an internal how the atoms are arranged internally. For those purposes, we essentially use diffraction techniques. So, the question is that why we use the diffraction techniques? But in any case, so what does the diffraction process will essentially have? Essentially will involve So, you all know that diffraction is an optical phenomenon, which means that there should be a source of the radiation. So, how to choose appropriate source for a crystal structure study? There are two things about it. One, the radiation, or you call as the electromagnetic radiation, should possess a wave property so that scattered waves can superpose coherently. So, that is the first and foremost characteristic of the radiation which we use. The second thing is that the wavelength of the radiation should be of the same order of magnitude as the lattice constant or the lattice parameter. So, lattice constant, which we call as the A in our earlier discussions, which we call as the A. So, or sometimes we used to take the term as ABC, whatever it is. So, the wavelength of the radiation should be of the same order of magnitude as the lattice constant or the lattice parameter. So, that is about the source. So, but the question is that why should we use, what is the kind of other characteristics of the source which we use? As I told you, this is the diffraction technique, and we will be catching only those coherent radiations into place. In physics, two wave sources are perfectly coherent if they have a constant phase difference and the same frequency, also they must have the same waveform, right. They should be coherent. In order to be coherent, they should have a constant phase difference and should have the same frequency and the waveform. So, coherence is an ideal property of the waves that enables stationary interference. Let it be temporally or spatially coherent, whatever will be the case. So, it is an ideal property that enables stationary interference. So, in this concept also, in the case of diffraction techniques which we will be using for analyzing the crystal structure also, we should have such kind of sources in place. So, till now prominently there are three kinds of diffraction techniques which are in place. One is the X-ray diffraction, second is the neutron diffraction, and third is the electron diffraction. So, X-ray diffraction is a very traditional technique, and it has been in place for quite long time, and X-ray from the time in which the X-ray was discovered. And then you have the neutron diffraction and the electron diffraction. Neutron diffraction is a very relatively new technique which was awarded Nobel Prize in 1994 only. And then you have the electron diffraction, which is widely used in these days with the help of all the technologies which are emerging these days, which you will call as the as in the case of TEM, transmission electron microscope. Of these three techniques, one can say that XRD is the most common, safer and economically viable technique. So, in the XRD setup, you will be seeing in different sizes, different dimensions, different cost and all those things. You have the XRD spectrometers right now in the market, from a desktop setup to the sizes of a big room. So, within the XRD technique itself, there can be sources which are based on X-ray tubes or based on synchrotron radiations. So, synchrotron radiations are big installations where you will be getting again you will have only the photons, but the photons are tuned in such a manner that you will be able to study the phenomenon of the or the arrangement of the atoms or the crystals in a thin film or at a very low angle. So, this is a very advanced growth, and XRD is now become one of the basic technique or a very essential technique for any material scientist or a solid state physicist to explore the crystal structure. Now, our next task should be to see all these diffraction techniques in detail. So, which we will be doing in one of the coming lectures. So, we will be starting with what does an X-ray diffraction means by, how is it implemented, what is the kind of sources which are available for the X-ray diffraction, how does an X-ray spectrum will look like, how to derive the information out of the X-ray diffraction pattern, and when you go for an X-ray diffraction experiment, what all are the precautions you should be knowing. All those kind of details we will be seeing in the next lecture in this series. Thank you very much for keeping your attention to this episode. See you next time.